Dear friends, today's readings point out patience amid discouragement concerning our personal vocations. But this discouragement is trumpeted by, encouraging solution for this in the gospel. For example, Job is a faithful man, but he doesn't know what on earth he is called to do. He awaits God's call, but is relegated to be patient. This leaves him miserable. He writes, "Is not a man's life on earth a drudgery? He's a slave who longs for the shade, a hireling who waits for his wages. So I have been assigned months of misery, and troubled nights have been allotted to me." Poor Job. My dear friends, if you have lived enough years, I believe that you can sympathize with Job. What is it that God has in mind for you? It seems he doesn't care. You have tried to be a good Christian. You tried to obey the commandments. What are the results? Your efforts result in failure. All that you've built crumbles like a house of cards. Your life, like the world itself, is a big mess. Does God really exist? And if he does, is he really concerned about you? Well, I think at times we can sympathize with Job. Then comes Mark's gospel. Jesus enters the picture. The very first thing he does is make Peter's ailing mother-in-law, and she's sick there, and he gives her back her health by taking her by the hand so she could wait on him. And it's a very clear vocation. There's no doubt about it. Maybe she's waited all these years in drudgery for something like this. It's a small but perhaps a trivial miracle, but for this reason she exists, called into being from all eternity for this moment, to realize this purpose, to be a part of this mission of Jesus Christ. So in the first act of his mission, Christ points out and depends upon a vocation of a mother-in-law, of Peter. Then what? He calls his first apostles. Their temporary calling was to be commercial fishermen. But it was a fitting preparation, wasn't it, for becoming fishers of men. I will imagine that Peter and his companions had never even given a thought to life beyond fishing and selling the fish, etc. But it assured a secure purpose, a secure future at least, but it certainly wasn't an exciting one. It didn't seem to have any part in Christ's mission as such. But then Jesus calls them to follow him. They don't hesitate, even if they are aware of the unknown. But for some reason, they put their trust in him. They don't know what the security is going to be. Who is this person? They've hardly seen him before. Maybe you've heard of him, but immediately they go along with him. They give up everything. Although it's funny in a way, because later Peter will say, "Lord, we've given up everything for you. What are we getting out of this?" And I thought that was very funny, because Peter gave up a fishing boat, and he gave up his mother-in-law. Was probably happy about that. But anyway, this becomes particularly poignant when James and his brother John, right then and there, leave their poor father Zebedee high and dry, and they join Peter and Andrew. What this shows, my dear friends, is that every human being, having been created in the image and likeness of God, is called by the Creator for a purpose. Sometimes that person is in on the purpose. More often, he or she is not. If he or she is a baptized Christian, this purpose is a calling, and it is something sacred and sublime, having to do with the mission of Jesus Christ on earth. whether it becomes clear in the minds of Peter and his companions as it is hidden, or in the case of Job, where it's certainly hidden. Whatever the calling, it is tied with this mission of Jesus Christ. It can at times be perplexing and demand patience, or it can be painful and demand courage, or it can be glorious and result in triumph. But I believe in every case it involves at one time or another all three of these conditions, at one time or another in the life of all of us. Let's take St. Paul. If there was ever a man who was more aware of his vocation, it was Paul. But it took a long time for him to get there. Remember, as a young man, he thought he had another vocation, to persecute the church at the beginning. Then he is thrown off his horse. He has his vision, and he's told, oh no, your vocation now is to be such and such, to be a preacher of Christianity. So Paul is not perplexed anymore. If I preach the gospel, there is no reason for me to boast, for an obligation has been imposed upon me, and woe to me if I don't preach it. Unlike Job, Paul had no occasion to be uncertain of his vocation, but he's still frustrated. He required patience, but not over his vocation. He requires patience over the result of it, especially with the Galatians. They were a hard people. Of course they were. They were Gaels. They were future Irishmen. And there was a frustration over those who would not accept it. He, like every one of us, was God's instrument in carrying out the mission of Jesus Christ. So, my friends, let Peter and Paul, and Andrew and James and John and Peter's mother-in-law, and even the poor suffering Job, be an example for us and an encouragement for us in moments of our lack of faith.